Okay, welcome back, class. And today we'll be talking about topic in scientific inquiry methods, in which we talked about different scientific methods and hypotheses already. So we'll talk about some different approaches to analyze or form your hypothesis. So there's two types basically. It's called inductive or deductive reasoning. We'll go into one by one each into detail. So by scientific inquiry or method, we are usually doing two kind of different things. We are trying to find out, give a description about something, or we're talking about why certain things are happening. The two approaches are there: explaining something, or based on observing, finding out okay, what is happening. So based on observations, you are doing some kind of description. That is descriptive approach, and then we're talking about why this is happening. So that is kind of a causal approach. So based on these two approaches, we have divided two concepts or scientific approaches, which is called inductive reasoning or inductive way of logic, and then is deductive way of thinking, also called reasoning or logical. These are basically logical approaches to science. So what are they? Okay, so let's talk about deductive reasoning. We know certain things or theories are already out there. There are so many concepts which are already out there. So using them or verifying them is called deductive reasoning. We are going to be testing certain phenomena in which there is a general statement out there or hypothesis out there, and we are going to be specifying into a small thing. Uh, One of the way of deductive reasoning is algorithm, where you might have heard about it. That simplest explanation is likely to be the correct one. This is a philosophical thing. Okay, again, coming back to deductive, let's talk about give you some example of deductive reasoning in which we are having different uh, theories which are already proven. For example, all human beings are mortal. Now, this is a theory, you can say a statement which is true, which is a fact. We know it's there. And then we say that one of Rizwan is a human being, for example. So that is now these two things are now we are going to test this. Okay, we know that all human beings are mortal, and we know that Rizwan is a human being. So now we are using deductive logic. We conclude that this means that Rizwan is mortal. So that is a deductive. We have a view, theory, or general statement out there, and we make specific observations. A deductive reasoning, in which the only thing which you need to know is that you need to know the facts there. If your facts are not out there, or it's already not proven, that we cannot employ deductive approach. Another way of understanding this is uh, everything's fall down to the ground, and different kinds of objects will fall to the ground, and a tennis ball is also one kind of object, and it will also fall down. So that it can be easily deduced from the current findings. The poor, I think I need to rechange this statement. Okay, yes, okay. From this point of view, we can also like deduce something that poor. The word poor here is the poor people have low income. I am poor, so I will also have a low income. So we can deduce to certain extent that this is what is happening. The main thing I'm doing is the diagram, which is I'm missing. I'll go to the diagram first, in which, yes, this one. So in which this is a deduction approach, in which a theory is already out there, and you are basically trying to find out different things. So from a very general perspective, you are pinpointing to a very specific finding. That is deductive approach, and in which we are now thinking from a very generic approach to from thinking big towards a small thing. Like for example, the theory is there, and you're just testing the theory. Theory of gravity is there. You're testing the theory. Okay, you're going to from a very big thing to a small specific things. So we are drawing conclusions of empirical findings, at a small level, findings at a small level. It's also called top-down approach, in which we kind of theories there, and we make hypotheses based on that theory, and collect the data, and we kind develop our findings, or let's say analyze and get to our findings. So this is a deductive approach in which theory is there. Based on that theory, we develop different hypotheses, and that hypothesis is then tested, and then that theory is confirmed. Okay, that is deductive approach. Then is inductive approach. Of course, it is now the opposite to deductive approach, in which we are going to be observing different reading. We'll take readings first. We'll take observations first, and based on that observation, we are going to be developing a theory. From a specific thing, we are going to be generalizing it. That is inductive approach. We make observation based on experiences, and we make from specific to general. In deductive, we were making from general to specific, and from inductive reasoning, we are going from specific thing to more generic things. It involves like okay, one more like in deductive reasoning, we know certain facts are true, but in inductive reasoning, we don't know any facts. So in that case, in that scenario, we employ the inductive way of reasoning. We try to make observation of different things, and then based on different observations, we come to a conclusion that maybe this is happening because of this. Okay, so that is kind of observing some situations or patterns, or identifying some patterns which is happening. Now the findings can be true, right, wrong. Like there's a more chance of failing a hypothesis in inductive reasoning, because your hypotheses are not based on fact. You're just hypothesizing that okay, maybe this is happening because of this, but actually it is not. Does not. So that is wrong. And most of the time, in current research, even in our department, we are usually employing deductive reasoning. Theory is already there. We're just formulating some problems, formulating some hypotheses, and we test it according to a certain theory, under a framework of certain theory. So that is deductive. In inductive, you are basically forming a theory. Theory is not there, but problem is there, or hypothesis is there. You test it, and based on that hypothesis, now you build a theory to explain your hypothesis. Other way around. So they are two opposite concepts. Like you are making observations that this type of vegetable is good for health, broccoli is good for health, carrot is good for health. So now, based on that, you said that okay, these three are good for health, and these three are vegetable. So now you can say that okay, vegetables are good for health. So now you are making your own theory. In the first, we knew the facts, and we just tested those. In this, we are formulating a theory. We are formulating a larger picture. We're going from a specific thing to a more generic thing. That is inductive reasoning. What are the advantages? Like advantages that in deductive, the facts, we should know the facts beforehand. The theory must be already existing, already agreed upon or tested before you're going to be researching on that. So that is deductive. Disadvantages that facts must be known in advance. So difficult to sometimes if it is facts are not there, so it would be very difficult. So you need to then formulate a theory. And formulating a theory, it's a very it's not impossible, but it is difficult, because a lot of theories are already developed. And deductive type of researches are more or less very much common in social sciences. Okay, and inductive, we can start with nothing, and then we can make a theory. But disadvantage is that your theory might be wrong. So that is advantage and disadvantage. advantages of induction, in which again we're talking about from observation we are going to be making theory. So theory building. Yes, Rida.
सर जो इंडक्टिव रीजनिंग है इसमें हम फॉर्मुलेट करते हैं एक थ्योरी, तो सर इसमें लाइक कितने हमको इधर सर कोई लिमिट या जिसको कहते हैं मिनिमम कोई पॉइंट है कि हमें कितने सपोर्टिंग पॉइंट्स होने चाहिए कि हम एक थ्योरी बना सकें? तो ये तो सर ये सब प्रोसीड
Yeah, yes. You're right. There is no hard and fast rules that this kind of observation you are going to be. If these number of observations you are doing it, and that means your theory is true or valid, or that can help you formulate. You can just read different literature, and then you can develop your own framework. That is inductive reasoning. You see that, okay, so many problems in institutions are happening. This is a problem. This is a problem. This is a problem. Okay, let's give me this kind of organizational chart. This will solve all the problems or majority of the problem. That is inductive research. Or in other words, okay, the theory is there. We just organogram or organization is there already, and we just say, okay, if we're going to change this a little bit, this little bit, that is deductive reasoning. Rita, you got my point?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So instead of deductive and inductive, we are from findings we are making a generic statements from specific to general. So in short, deduction is basically you are proving something. You're proving a theory, and induction is you are building a theory. So these are two type of approaches. Any questions about inductive and deductive theory? We call it reasoning, we call it way of thinking, we call it logic. So this is a scientific inquiry method in which two type of approaches, deductive approach or inductive approach, is used. Everyone clear about inductive and deductive research? Theory building and theory build. This is, I think, the crux of the both approaches. Another example of deductive, like based on reasoning, we can now make some kind of hypothesis or make some kind of inferences, or and by inferences I mean you draw conclusion or draw based on findings, you make some kind of a statement. That is drawing inferences. So this is another two examples of inductive and deductive. So hopefully, if I give you some kind of hypothesis, you can judge whether, if I give you type of research, maybe you can guess that does this research employ a deductive approach or an inductive approach. Okay. Now application is very both approaches are very important in research. To continuously check a validity of a theory, especially in social sciences, because of an urban planning, especially in which a lot of evolution is already happening in the scientific literature. The theories are no more valid sometimes. So you need to maybe update it depending upon the current socioeconomic situations and institution situations. It is important that yes. So I was talking about, yes, both are important in urban planning, and theory continuously need to be tested and hold true. So deductive approach is happening in which the theory developed by the developed countries or the Western world that are replicated in case of developing countries. So we are testing their theory in context of Pakistan as well. So that is kind of a deductive way of thinking. On the other hand, depending upon, again, because of the rapid evolution and exponential change in how we are managing our cities, new theories or concepts are also emerging. So when that theories are also being built. So inductive reasoning is also very important in social sciences. Yes. So most of your research you're going to be using, uh, they employ both of your concepts. So you are based on some theory, you are making your hypothesis. Most of you will be doing that. So in the first part of your research, that will be very deductive in nature, in which using some kind of theory or phenomena or a framework, you are drawing your own thinking. So deductive. So that then you formulate your hypothesis and then you test your hypothesis, make your observations and test your hypothesis. And depending on your findings, you now say, okay, theory is true, but this dimension must be added, this thing must be added to refine the theory. So now you are also adding to the new theory as well. So most of your researches are deductive and inductive in nature as well. In the beginning, because you have no idea what is going happening in this field, in this topic, and you don't have a grip on this in the beginning, you always go and look for different literature. And when you look for different literature, you make some deduction based on the theories and develop your hypothesis. And once you have the data, if your data is purely 100% matching with the theory, then okay, then your research is deductive. Most of the time, some of the things will not hold true in context of your area or in your area. All the points of this theory will not hold. Maybe 90% of theory is okay, but 10% is not. So you are then saying, okay, this 10%, this amount of theory is not valid in our context. So you are now adding to the investigation, and you are doing inductive reasoning to add something to the current theory. So this is a generic wheel of science that you will be using in your research. Of course, for now, this is a very generic things, but once you're adding your X and Y different variables, your objective, your hypothesis, when all the things are being happened, so this simple wheel will turn into something different. So you have to be conceptually clear. This is a very generic overview of the research process you might be employing in your thesis. That's it. Yes, any question? Anyone? Inductive and deductive research or reasoning. Okay, okay. If you don't have comments, I'll stop the recording.